Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Full Press NFL Sunday. It is week 2 in the NFL, Sunday, September the 18th, right? Yeah, 19th, something like that. I don't know. I should have probably checked. It is the 18th, according to my watch, and I trust my watch implicitly. So here we are. Welcome. Good morning, everyone. Hoping everyone is having a good Sunday, short of Chargers fans out there. I'm sure they're still pretty bummed after Thursday night's loss to the Kansas City Chiefs. But we are here, and by we, I mean I am Ian. He is Braden, and good morning, folks, and welcome to the show. Braden, how you doing today after a pretty tight Chiefs win, one in which didn't look quite guaranteed until late in the game?
Yeah, I think it's kind of just expected now between Mahomes and Herbert that these games are kind of going to come down to the wire, and kind of different to see the Chiefs defense be the one to give the team the momentum, and some interesting things late in that game that I didn't expect, and the quarterback injuries, which I know we'll talk about. It's going to be interesting to see how this affects LA moving forward, but a loss like this early in the year against the division doesn't obviously sink the Chargers season, but definitely a boost to Kansas City head to head.
Yeah, it certainly is, especially when you consider that, if in a matter of a matter of 10 seconds, the Chargers were moments away from going up 7 late, and all of a sudden found themselves behind. I mean, it's what makes this game so great, how quickly it can flip like that. And obviously, one mistake certainly really changed the momentum in this game because it wasn't quite what we expected. Yes, it was relatively high scoring, but it wasn't a dominant Chiefs offense. However, and this is what they do best, and this is why they're so great. They maximize and they take advantage of every single mistake, whether it's a team mistake, whether it's and I'm not saying this in a negative way, an officiating mistake or
Right.
a penalty on another, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what they're doing. They're going to maximize and take advantage of every one of those opportunities. And that's what separates them from a lot of other teams in the league. There's only a few teams you can really point to. And I mean a few as in maybe three that you can sit there and say, hey, those teams are always going to take advantage. And that's what the Chiefs did. However, and I'll ask you this, and we're not going to spend too much time talking about this game because we got a lot of stuff to talk about this for today because kickoff is just a few hours away. We have this show, and then of course coming up after this, we have Full Press NFL Fantasy Live with Kyle Senra. So stay tuned here on YouTube or Twitter, wherever you're watching this video. But I felt overall, I thought Thursday was a game in which Tyreek Hill's absence was a bit more noticeable. The explosiveness of the Chiefs, and I'm not saying this is a permanent thing. I'm just saying that in this game in particular, you consider the Chargers defense, how good they are. I mean, J.C. Jackson had kind of a shaky opener, but for the most part, this team is a very, very good defensive, or at least talent wise. But I thought Thursday was a game that we really did kind of see Tyreek Hill's absence being felt a little bit. Now, talk me out of it or agree with me. What say you?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that the two biggest wide receiver additions were pretty much non-existent in Juju Smith-Schuster and Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I think
Oh,
MVS only
I
had like
started Juju on my fantasy team this week. It's not a good start.
yeah, I think MVS only caught like half of his targets, and when they both did catch balls, it was pretty short gains. So I think it's just Mahomes has kind of talked about highlighting different receivers each week, but I think you have to have those guys being able to create enough separation week to week, and if not, it's going to kind of come down to the tight end depth and running back depth that they have, and like you said, that lack of explosiveness. Against a team like that and the Chargers, they have so much speed in their secondary, and that was one thing that they could always do really well matching up with Tyreek Hill when he was there. So now that he's gone, they can kind of just sit back like that and play in zone. So they're going to kind of have to be able to, I think, attack more in the middle of the field. I was kind of surprised how they kind of kept trying to push it to the outside with guys like Juju or MVS on certain targets, and it just wasn't there. So I think it's just going to maybe be adjusting where they try to attack defenses more than anything with this kind of lack of explosion right now.
Which And I jokingly said I agree, obviously, with Juju because I think I got 2.5 points out of them. So it's looking very likely that I'm heading for an 0-2 start. But that's besides the point. That's why I don't host the Full Press Fantasy Live show. That's why I do this show. Who is going to have to step up the most? Because again, I mean, you can't expect to get exactly what Tyreek Hill. I'm not saying who's going to beat Tyreek Hill. It's impossible and unrealistic to expect that. We saw in his debut with Miami with a far lesser quarterback his impact and what he can do just by himself. So who's got to step up the most? Is it Juju? Is it MVS? Because you bring in MVS to be kind of that take the top off the defense, so to speak, and he seems to be struggling to do so. So who has to step up the most for this Chiefs offense?
Yeah, I guess the first name that comes to mind for me is McCole Hardman. It's kind of weird to see the same issues reoccurring for him now in his fourth season. I think there's times where you see him kind of give up on certain routes, especially deeper ones down the field, and there's times where I think he kind of struggles to kind of pick up his open lane right after the catch. So I think that's kind of where my mind first goes to kind of support guys like Juju and MVS. But yeah, I think if I had to kind of point to one of the other two, Valdez Scantling is kind of the one I've been more surprised with the slow start, just because I think he has that ability to kind of separate underneath, similar to how they used Sammy Watkins in the past, and they've kind of just not really been able to design any plays for him that allow him to kind of use that speed after the catch. So we'll see if they kind of alter his routes a little bit, but those are kind of the two names that I think I'd point towards.
Well, we say all that to say, well, the Chiefs are now 2-0 and having a pretty big win, and probably against their biggest competitor in the division. Now, again, we're kind of in a wait and see mode to see what Denver's going to be. Obviously, the Raiders have potential, but we have a better idea of what they are. So I would, and based on just what we saw on Thursday, the Chargers are clearly the biggest competition in that division, and the team that can truly match them talent wise, and that's partly with the Chiefs. Again, you lose Tyreek Hill, you're going to take a bit of a step back in overall talent. It doesn't mean this team is any less of a team, but it's just realistic. You're taking away arguably one of the most impactful weapons on the football field off the team. It's going to take you a step back a little bit. But the Chargers, unfortunately, though, are dealing, obviously with a little bit of a injury concern, and there's hope that Justin Herbert's not going to miss any games, especially with the extra week, or not extra week, but extra few days having played on Thursday Night Football to kind of rest up. But I don't know, Braden. We were talking before we got on the air here. We were both surprised that the doctor who was responsible for essentially opening the door for Justin Herbert to take over from day one by mishandling Tyrod Taylor's injections is still with the Chargers and still handling patients such as Justin Herbert. So there's a concern there, because I mean, to me, I feel like that's a situation where, at least until the situation is resolved, you would probably not want that person doing the same thing. But that's just my opinion. The other issue is the lingering issue this could be for the Chargers. I mean, this team is not the team they are without Justin Herbert. You're not going to replace what he does, with anyone else. I mean, you can argue, and I know this is an endless debate, and everyone has their opinion, and it changes literally quarter to quarter. But if we're looking at the young quarterbacks, the young era, new crowd, I'm not talking Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers or those guys. I'm talking 26 and I guess now 27 when it comes to Patrick Mahomes and under. These two might be the cream of the crop. You look at their time in the league at the same time since 2020, obviously when Justin Herbert took over, near identical statistical output. Obviously, the playoff success and the success prior to Herbert coming into the league is what separates Mahomes. But I mean, you're talking about two of the more naturally gifted athletes that play the quarterback position in the same division. However, Justin Herbert's been, even in his short time, a little bit more banged up. And this is an injury that could certainly impact him for the rest of the season. So I'd be concerned if I'm the Chargers. I wouldn't, honestly, if this is a situation where maybe he could use a little extra time, maybe you sit him next week and just for precaution, because you need him in week 17, week 18, and hopefully in the playoffs, because this team looks like a team that's built to compete. And, if one mistake on his behalf, and that's something he has to clean up, changes the narrative of what we're talking about right now, from the Chargers aren't quite on the Chiefs level to, well, the Chargers might actually be better than the Chiefs. And that's the difference between that one play. And then, of course, now
Right.
with Justin Herbert injury, there's even more concerns for the Chargers. So I say all that to ask you, how concerned are you with this injury? And is this something that could potentially be a season altering type thing, even if he plays every single game the rest of the year?
Yeah, I guess my biggest concern is kind of like you said, the long-term picture. I think this is something that's probably gonna linger all season long. I mean, you talk about just how often he has to throw during each game. This isn't a team that really relies, obviously, on the running game a lot. They have a really good starting running back in Austin Eckler, but kind of more of a versatile chess piece more than anything. So I think you kind of look at the long-term effects of this and just wonder if he's going to be able to kind of complete all those deep throws and all those kind of vertical shots that he's been known for. I don't know if it's totally impossible to expect him to come back 100% healthy, but I think it's just knowing how long of a season it is, and obviously the grind that this conference is in the AFC, and obviously in the AFC West. It's going to be interesting to see if he has to kind of alter his game a little bit, but. Like you said, I think with the talent on this team, maybe it would not be the worst thing in the world to, sit him a couple games if he needs it. But yeah, I think with the Chargers, it's kind of all about, just looking more at the big picture rather than trying to get everything back all at once, so to speak.
Well, seeing as I kind of fumbled the transitions from the graphics, obviously you knew, everyone out there watching or paying attention knows that we were getting ready to move on, and then this kind of flicked over. And I wasn't trying to tell you to wrap it up. I just unfortunately hit the button a little early, but it's kind of a perfect way to transition and say that obviously the Herbert injury is a concern, but it wasn't the only big injury from this past week. And obviously TJ Watt, this is a guy that, yeah, I picked to be the defensive player of the year, and like my fantasy season, it's my futures predictions are going quickly down the tube, because I actually picked actually I put money on Justin Herbert to win the MVP. I did not pick him to win the MVP, if that makes sense. You know what I'm saying? I
Right.
took
Like
the odds for Justin Herbert. I felt at the
yeah.
time where I was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll just, what the hell? I actually picked Tom Brady to win the MVP, but we'll talk about him later. TJ Watt, we saw the injury last week. We saw his reaction on camera, and I think someone actually picked him up that he said something along the lines, I think I tore my pec, and
Right.
that's at the end of the game, or end of the season. That's what we saw, and this is something that could, he's out at least 4 games. On the graphic, it says he's supposed to be out 6 games. What's the final because I feel like this went back and forth. I want to make sure that that I'm getting this right, but 6 games is optimistic, correct?
Yeah, I think maybe the maximum that I saw was maybe 8 weeks at the
Yeah.
most. So around probably half the season, I would guess.
Which, look, that's devastating if you're the Steelers, because this is not a team that is a high-powered offense. We saw them barely win a game in which they forced 4 Joe Burrow interceptions, including a pick 6, and they needed every second of overtime to win that game. So this is a tough loss, I think, for Pittsburgh, and one that, I don't know, if you're a Patriots fan, you're happy you're not seeing TJ Watt on the other side of the field, because then you actually kind of feel like you have a chance, because TJ Watt's a guy that can completely dominate a game, especially against a team that hasn't quite found its way offensively. And certainly that's going to be interesting to monitor. So another injury. We got, see, now when I want to click the thing, it's not going to let me. Let's try it. There we go. Look at that. Here we go. I figured it out, folks. I figured it out. Excuse me. Jamal Adams, obviously big win for Seattle over Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos to open the season, but they're high-priced, high capital cost Jamal Adams safety. He's done for the season. And look, I mean, I know the Seahawks picked up a big win against Denver, but this is not a team I'm all of a sudden saying, well, maybe they have something here. And especially now with an injury to, one of their best players. And look, I think he's a little bit overrated. So it kind of, excuse me, speaks to what Seattle has talent-wise. So tough injury for a team that I think is at best borderline a wild card team.
Yeah, and he just does so much for that defense. I mean, he blitzes a lot. He kind of plays in the box on early downs against obvious run situations. So he's not really your typical safety and kind of more of that box linebacker type. So he missed time, I think, some last year too, and it's been a tough go for him in Seattle since leaving the Jets. You think kind of how that whole situation went down, how much Seattle gave up for that kind of a player playing that position in that trade, and obviously, he's not ever going to really be a game changer week in, week out, but you just think about how much he does for that defense. For a young team going through a transition, that's obviously tough to see him gone for the whole year, not just, like we said with Watt, a couple of weeks or a couple months or so.
Yeah, and look, I mean, for a team that's lacking or very short of talent offensively and defensively, you losing out a guy like even Jamal Adams is definitely going to be tough. So one graphic we actually don't have up here, so I'll just talk about it. And I think might be the biggest, most impactful injury. Dak Prescott. I mean, this is a guy who you either have him close to, excuse me. Sorry, I've been getting over being sick, folks. So you have to bear with me as I'm powering through this live show. My voice has been rather unforgiving the last few days, but you're talking about a guy who, if you ask one person, you may have him bordering top 5. If you ask another, he's maybe top 15. There's that much of a discrepancy. Who is Dak Prescott? And I think Dak Prescott's it's a pretty good quarterback. I haven't seen enough. There isn't that playoff success. There isn't those moments that make you think, oh yeah, this guy is tier 1, borderline tier 1 type of guy. We've seen that from even guys like Josh Allen, even in a more shortened period of time. But for the Dallas Cowboys, this is a team that I guess I reluctantly picked to win the NFC East, just because, again, I mean, the NFC East is always such a mystery, and it's always what you don't think it's going to happen is going to happen. But I thought this was a team trending downward. I thought they've not only gone from having one of the most envious group of offensive linemen you can imagine. Every team in the league would have loved their line, to now it's overpriced, void of talent, and injured. I mean, you talk about their best lineman being out. They don't have Amari Cooper, and now without Dak Prescott for several weeks. This is you're talking about a team that I think might ultimately be in the running for the top overall pick. That's how bad I think it is. Is that an overreaction, Braden? Am I being a little bit too much on this, or is this a team that is just going to implode before our eyes? Because let's face it, before Dak even got injured, they did not look good on offense. And this was last year the top offensive team in the league. Everyone wants to talk about the Chiefs and the Bucks and all that, but Dallas actually was number 1 points per game offensively last season, and they scored 3, with a majority of the game having a healthy Dak Prescott.
Yeah, there's so many different directions I could go here. I think it's just, first off, the contracts. You talked about the offensive line being overpriced. I can't really, think of any other contract that's held the team down more recently than Ezekiel Elliott's. And there's always kind of that debate of paying running backs or not. And they didn't just really pay Elliott. They probably gave him the biggest contract I think we'll ever really see in a running back. So that's definitely one that stings right now. And Elliott's still a fine player, but he's definitely not what he was a few years ago. So definitely, like you said, got worse this offseason. They had to trade away Lael Collins. I guess they didn't really have to, but they didn't really want to, go about restructuring his contract. So there's so many roster decisions this offseason where they got worse, and a lot of high price contracts, like you said. I think with the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think you're overreacting, thinking this could be a team that has a top pick in the draft, just because we kind of saw what it was a couple years ago when Dak was out with that ankle or foot injury. And I just think you got to go back to the questions of the coaching and Mike McCarthy. I don't really know if he's gonna survive this. I know Jerry Jones has kind of been patient with his coaches, but it would be surprising to me to see him coaching in Dallas next year. And I think one more thing you kind of have to look at with Dallas last season is the defense. To me, kind of overachieved. You had that turnover luck. Dan Quinn was kind of getting hyped up in head coaching interviews and circles like that. So you don't want to say it was all luck last season, but there's so much that they lost last year that a few games bounce their way, and then you lose your top players, and it's just kind of a nosedive right now. But yeah, I don't think it's an overreaction to think this could be a team with the top pick, maybe number 2, number 3, if not number 1.
Yeah, and look, I mean, we're not sitting here certainly not saying that. I don't know 100% if I believe in the Commanders or the Eagles yet. I mean, I just haven't seen enough. Obviously, both picking up wins, but um, I look. I just look at Dallas and I just don't see any redeeming. I'm sorry, Cowboys fans. I see no redeeming qualities whatsoever. They don't have a promising defense. They don't have. Look, holding the Bucks offense to a majority of field goals. I mean, that's impressive. I'm not going to sit there and take that away. I'll be honest though, I thought that was more on the play calling of the Bucks than anything. I voiced my opinion about how I thought they got a little too cute or a little too wanting to have balance when just do what you do best and let Tom Brady throw. And I think if they would have focused more on that, I think they could have put up some more points. But that's beside the point. I don't see anything redeeming about that. About that unit, certainly not the offense. We've already gone over that. So yeah, look, I mean, Jerry Jones has been known to be very, very patient with his coaches. I don't know if the same thing's going to happen with Mike McCarthy for a number of reasons, but primarily because guess what? A guy like Sean Payton might be available. And if Jerry Jones has a choice between Sean Payton and Mike McCarthy, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to go with Sean Payton, a guy that he knows pretty well. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with this Dallas Cowboys franchise moving forward. Because let's face it, I mean, Dak Prescott he's not old, but he's not young. He's not that up and coming. He's been around for quite some time. This is year 8, I believe, year 9.
Yeah, I think year 8. I want to say maybe year 7, but
yeah. So I mean that's what we're talking about, a guy who's been in the league a number of times, and I remember early on, not too long ago, he was a guy that maybe it was mostly from one guy on national television talking about him, but I feel like some other people kind of bought into it a little bit at least. But it was like, oh, he has those intangibles. He has things that like Tom Brady had, and it's like, okay, but how do you know? Because we haven't seen it. We haven't seen that success outside of, I don't know, maybe the division or some moments here and there throughout some regular season, certainly not in the playoffs. So, yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, this isn't a team that has a lot of things going for them, so to speak. So,
yeah. And I'll just say, I mean, there's, not a reason to think Dak can't obviously come back healthy and improve. But, one thing with injuries is you always got to remember the quarterback position. Your body's going to continue to kind of deteriorate. Now, you've seen 2 big injuries for Dak Prescott in a matter of 3 seasons. So that's something that obviously Dallas is going to have to balance here with his big contract as well.
yeah, no doubt. So, before we get to our game picks and we'll talk about these individual games, we're gonna have some fun with some props. And I know I just took the screen down, but I'm gonna bring it right back up and obviously fumble this once again. There we go. Okay, wow. Okay, so apparently I got to zoom in on these. So kind of a, I guess, a big game. You know, Miami's coming off a pretty big win over the Patriots. I mean, who knows what the Patriots are right now? So maybe we'll look back at this and be like, well, it wasn't a great win, but. I look at this Ravens team. I think Lamar Jackson had a strong opening week. I mean, the story following him is his future. I mean, that's what it's going to be the entire season. So I've been very intrigued to see whether or not the Ravens and Lamar Jackson specifically is just going to have, like, you know, the contract, the quote unquote contract year season, the one where he just over exceeds every expectation, knowing, you know, this is what it's for. It's for that big contract. So yeah, let's get into our prop bets. Visit playpickup.com. You can check out all of the great props that they have, and of course, some of the great articles by us and some of their partner networks. So over under 43.5 points in the Dolphins Ravens game. And look, I think the Ravens have the far greater advantage at quarterback. I don't see as much as Miami celebrating the big win. I mean, division wins are always big against the Patriots. Their offense was very uninspiring, and I think they're going to struggle a bit with the Ravens. However, I don't think the Ravens are going to struggle against the Dolphins. So I think combined, they're definitely going to hit this over of 43.5. So I guess give me the over.
Yeah, I agree with you. Going back to Miami's offense real quick last week, it was interesting to see how long it took them to kind of get the ball to Jalen Waddle. I think they'll maybe try to highlight him a little earlier this week, and I just think I kind of expect a lot of explosive plays in this game from both sides, but more so in the passing game for each team. So I agree with you on the over. I think this was going to be actually a relatively easy hit today on the over.
All right. So big thing, maybe this is a repeat of last season. Maybe this is deja vu, but Rodgers and the Packers looked awful in week 1 and a loss to the Minnesota Vikings. But luckily for them, they get a team, one of the two teams that they've consistently beat up on in the Aaron Rodgers era, and that is the Chicago Bears. So the question is, though, is Aaron Rodgers or Justin Fields going to have more total yards on Sunday Night Football? And as much as I'd love to enjoy the moment that would be Justin Fields outperforming Aaron Rodgers, I just can't pick that. That'd be too much. That'd be a little bit too out of line for me. So I'll take Aaron Rodgers with this one. I think he's going to have a pretty solid game against a team that, yes, he owns, but, it's the Bears. And what do you get for that?
Yeah, there's a lot of me that wants to go Justin Fields solely because of the rushing that he can have, but I think it'll be close. But I'm going to go Rodgers in this one. I think there's just something about how big this game is going to be for them in prime time at home. Coming off an already early division loss, another division game here, so I think he's going to kind of be carrying the team on his back tonight. So I'll go with Rodgers.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's. I didn't really sound the alarm bell with last week's loss. Again, mentioning what we saw last season in the 38-3 loss to the Saints. Now, losing to the Vikings, a divisional opponent, that's a little bit worse, I guess, in week 1 if you're going to compare the two. If they lose again today, that's when I think you can start to maybe sound some alarms and wonder if this isn't just a shaky start to the season, something a little bit more long term. But we'll see. Like I said, I'm finding it very hard to go against Aaron Rodgers right now, especially when it comes to him going up against the Bears. So next, we got the Pats and the Steelers. We already talked about J.J. Watt. He's obviously not going to be playing. By every indication, it looks like Mac Jones is going to go, even with a little bit of a back injury. This is a tough one because I think that the Patriots are capable of scoring a lot of points, and history dictates that they've handled the Steelers relatively well, but that history involved Tom Brady, and Tom Brady's not here right now. So I think I chose the over when I made these picks on Tally Site or one of our partners. So I'm gonna stick with that, and hopefully I'm not contradicting myself. I should have probably checked that right before I got on the air, but I'm gonna take the over because I do think the Patriots offense. I If they push the ball downfield a little bit more, I think they can have success against this Steelers team. So uh, yeah, I'll take the over, and I think the two combined for over 41.5 points.
Yeah, I think I took the under. I kind of actually expect more field goals and touchdowns really from each side, but more so from the Steelers. I think there's just still some questions about Najee Harris. I mean, I think he's going to play today, but a little banged up there, and this is still a Pittsburgh offensive line that has a lot of questions. So I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be a lot more field goals than touchdowns. So I'll go with the under today.
All right. So interesting matchup. One that I kind of I brushed by, and a storyline that I didn't really think about. You have the number one and number two pick of the 2016 NFL draft going head to head. Now, obviously, it was not the Lions and the Eagles, or I'm sorry, the Lions and the Commanders that chose them. It was obviously the Rams and the Eagles, but interesting matchup. One that 4 or 5 years ago would have got a far greater play on national television is kind of going under the radar. So more passing yards. And look, I got to go with Carson Wentz. I know the Lions, they scored a bunch of points last week, and everyone loves Dan Campbell, and the players love Dan Campbell. I just think Carson Wentz at his best is better than Jared Goff at his best, and I think for right now you're getting Carson Wentz at a pretty high level. So I'll take Carson Wentz in this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree. I think Detroit's kind of one of those teams that is one that wants to have a lot of balance as well. DeAndre Swift
Hmm.
looks like he'll play today, battling an ankle injury, but they ran the ball a lot. It seemed like last week, so I think just by virtue of Detroit's balance, I got to go with Wentz in this one.
All right. Next, we have the Cardinals Raiders over under 51.5 points. Um, I think the Raiders can score some points. I'm curious to see what the Cardinals are going to bring us after we, just kind of a really of a dud against Kansas City. But I'll take the over on this one because I don't know. I feel like this could be even at their most reckless. Both teams can score points against each other. So yeah, give me some wild back and forth, sloppy football, and going over 51.5 points.
Yeah, you kind of took the words out of my mouth. I think this will be a wild game. Two bad secondaries that are either really young or really banged up right now. So I kind of expect a lot of explosive plays through the air today. I think this will be another easy hit on the over.
All right, next we have Ryan Tannehill going up against Josh Allen on Monday Night Football. We're skipping ahead a little bit, but feels like forever since Josh Allen has played a game because he hasn't played since opening night against the Rams, and that was what feels like months ago now. But um, look, I think a couple of years ago, Ryan Tannehill was at his absolute best, and really, it really hasn't matched that since, and it kind of feels like it's been going downhill. I think Allen is the opposite. I mean, I think he's been trending upward. I'm certainly not, going full on Allen hype train here like some people are, but obviously he's been trending upward for a couple seasons now. And look, the Titans they're good, and every time someone reminds me that they were the number one seed last year, I laugh because I completely forgot about the last time someone reminded me of that. But this is a team that I think is good. They're probably going to win their division, but I don't see much outside of that. And I just think Buffalo is a much better team. So give me Josh Allen. This is a long-winded way of saying Josh Allen's going to have more passing yards on Monday.
Yeah, Josh Allen and I think Tannehill. I don't really know what kind of trust he'll have in some of his receivers. I know Kyle Phillips, who's probably their best wide receiver right now, is like a day three rookie. He was banged up after their first game, so there's a lot of injuries there, and I think this is going to be a game Buffalo is probably going to treat more as a playoff game than some may expect, losing to Tennessee each of the last 2 years. So I think they're going to kind of want to stick it into the Titans' face a little bit. And I don't really know if this is close. I got to go with Josh Allen.
All right. Well, we already did this one, so Apparently, I can't figure this out. All right, let's see what we got here. Maybe that was the last one. Was it the last one? Nope, we got one more. Okay, here we go. Big matchup. Obviously, I'm surprised because it's me, and I haven't really mentioned Tom Brady much, but we haven't talked about one of the bigger matchups of this Sunday, and that is the Bucs versus the Saints. Obviously, it's big for the fact that the Bucs have somehow struggled against the Saints outside of the playoffs during the Tom Brady era, and that's kind of rare to say, but it is what it is. Mike Evans, he was a little banged up in week one. Obviously, Michael Thomas playing his first game since 2020 or whatever it was, or the opener. Yeah, 2020 because he missed all of last season. Which one of these two has more receiving yards in week two? I want to say it's going to be Mike Thomas because I think the Bucs just have a little bit more to work with, especially if Julio Jones does go.
Right.
And I think Brady, obviously, I think he can spread the ball around more than I think Jameis Winston. So I think Mike Thomas is going to have more receiving yards in week two.
Yeah, I got to go with Mike Thomas as well. I think the volume, like you kind of said, Tampa Bay, I think spreading it around a lot more. But I think there's just going to be kind of an emphasis placed on Michael Thomas in this game. Sounds like Dennis Allen and him really have a good relationship after kind of some questions there about his future in New Orleans. So I think he's kind of going to be highlighted even more than what we maybe imagine in this somewhat deeper Saints passing attack than what they had last season. But yeah, I got to go with Thomas here as well.
There we go. That kind of gave away what we were going to do next because we're actually kind of running out of time here a little bit because like I want to remind everyone our Full Press NFL Full Press Fantasy Live show is coming up here at 11:30. So let's take a look at our picks this week. Now, of the six of us that are up here, and I want to shout out George Carmi because for some reason we could not get his picks up on this graphic. It was kind of a funky little mishap, but I'm sure he picked all winners. So go check it out. I'm sure he posted it on Twitter. So there are several games that we all agree on. Surprisingly, actually, there were a lot of games. We all picked Arizona. We all picked the Raiders over the Cardinals. We all picked the Broncos over the Texans. That's not surprising. We all took the Bengals over Dallas. Obviously, if you heard our Dallas discussion earlier, I don't think Dallas is going to win a lot of these matchups going forward. And we took San Francisco over Seattle and the Rams over Atlanta. So, I'm sorry, and the Browns over the Jets. That's just kind of how it goes. And one of the bigger matchups, again, we talked about just a minute ago, the Packers at Chicago. I think we all believe that Aaron Rodgers in this offense is going to rebound against a pretty good, maybe great, maybe bad Bears team. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I can't count. There's several of us. However, I must ask you, Braden, it was almost another clean sweep. However, you strayed from the course and picked the New Orleans Saints over the Buccaneers, and sympathize with you. I certainly can because I am the only one who picked the Chargers to win on Thursday. So hopefully, because of my fandom of Tom Brady, you end up on the same end of the stick as I did on Thursday. But thoughts on that game? Because again, you are one of the dissenting opinions of this group of game pickers. What do you think New Orleans is going to do to upset Tom Brady and the Buccaneers?
Yeah, I think for me it kind of comes down to just the trench play right now. Cameron Jordan, I think you look at him in that depth on the defensive line, kind of going against a banged up and somewhat inexperienced to a degree Tampa Bay offensive line. I think Brady will have a fine game, but I just think it's going to be where points are at a premium in my mind, and I just think there may be enough of a way where New Orleans defense can kind of win them. Some plays where they flip the field a little bit or are able to kind of set Jameis Winston and company up with pretty good field position. So I do think it'll be kind of a tight one. It'll come down to the wire, but I think really just right now I trust New Orleans defense just a hair more to make those stops backed up in their own end maybe than I do the Tampa Bay Bucs.
Yeah, and plus, I mean, it's really, honestly, it's tough to ignore the regular season history of the last couple seasons. For whatever reason, the Saints just have the Bucs number, and again, it's hard to explain. How can you explain? Because I think everyone believes that the Buccaneers are a better team. They have been a better team. I mean, there's no one that's going to sit here and say, oh, well, I mean, we saw a couple this season kind of go a little overboard with the Saints, but we saw some of those elements last week where, yeah, at times they're going to look like, wow, this is kind of a not so good team, but then they're going to pull these miracles out of their rear end and win football games. So I understand a bit of the hype when it comes to the Saints, certainly when it comes to them versus the Buccaneers, because, well, how can you argue against 0-4 the last two seasons in the regular season for the Buccaneers? However, I feel like they finally get over the hump. I don't know why. I don't have any any sort of like undercut reason that's just going to make people go, oh, of course. No, I don't. I'm feeling like they're finally going to get over the hump, but maybe you'll be right. Maybe you'll be right, Brayden. If not, you have another lone wolf situation here brewing, and I'm looking at it right now, and the five of us outside of you, and again, I didn't see George's pick, so maybe he agrees with you. But for right now, our graphic up here on the screen has five of the six of us taking the Baltimore Ravens to win. But you got the Dolphins going on the road. Two a time? Is that what it is? Or do you have yeah, are you trying to appease one of our former colleagues that worked for us here and give her a little bit of confidence for the Dolphins moving forward? What do you say? What do the Dolphins do to win this game?
I think really just the skill positions. I actually think Miami is a little bit deeper right now than Baltimore. I think this is. I mean, they got a few obviously recognizable names with Marlon Humphrey, and of course there's a lot of hype surrounding Kyle Hamilton as a rookie. But I think there's just explosive plays to be had with Miami, kind of being able to hit on those deep plays, and I think there's just the depth right now in Baltimore's pass catching group. I still have a lot of questions. So I think it's going to be tight, but I think also you got to look to Miami's Thursday night win last year. I think they're going to have an ability to get enough pressure on Lamar to kind of keep it close and within striking distance. So kind of a funky way, maybe they win it at the end with the Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill deep shot.
Yeah, well, I expect Tyreek Hill to get in the end zone today. I think that's that kind of feels like a given. Um, But I think I ultimately will obviously see it on the screen. I'll take the Ravens to win this, but it's mostly because I just don't have a lot of confidence in Tua. I just don't because like I feel like eventually the Tyreek Hill honeymoon is gonna, and I'm not saying on Tyreek Hill's part. I think the frustration I don't know if it was genuine, but we saw a little bit of it already this past Sunday with kind of the off target throws and just kind of it just didn't really mesh well. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, man, this is week one. Now, in 10 weeks we could not even think about it. They could be on a roll or whatever, and we'll just kind of laugh and well, how would we ever doubt this? But right now I do doubt it, and I wonder if some of these issues continue to start today, whether or not this is going to be an issue that's going to disrupt what they're trying to do offensively. Because, well, when you have the quarterback and the star wide receiver not on the same page, that's a problem. Certainly when the quarterback isn't the quote unquote alpha in this situation. Because again, Tua's got a lot to prove. This isn't Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. If Tyreek Hill's pissed off, well, see ya, Tyreek. We're going to go with our quarterback. I mean, there's a handful of guys that you do that with, and Tua is not one of them. So I do think Baltimore wins this one, and I wonder if it does kind of start to put a little cracks in this honeymoon period that we're seeing right now with the Dolphins, Tyreek Hill, and of course Tua. And I think obviously Tua being the biggest issue. So a couple more games before we let you all go. We both disagree on Washington, Detroit. I take Washington. You take Detroit. Like I said, I think Carson Wentz is going to have the bigger game, and I think ultimately this offense is going to perform a little bit better. I still don't know who Detroit is other than just a hype machine. I mean, and to me, that gets you unbelievable wins and devastating losses. There's no in between when it comes to the Lions. So I think today is going to be one of those devastating losses to a Commanders team that does a lot of things pretty good, but still is no sure thing when it comes to offense because of, well, as good as Carson Wentz can be, he also has those moments of boneheadedness, I guess you want to call it. And I don't think that's going to happen. Certainly not to the point now that it will hurt them in this week. So I got Washington. What do you like about Detroit?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I just like their running game against this Washington front. I think they can kind of slow them down and maybe take them out of that pass rushing element enough. By forcing them to kind of be back on their heels a little bit, not really knowing what to expect. If this game obviously gets out of hand early, that could change things for Detroit. But I kind of think this will be a game where they can kind of keep the pace they want to. I definitely think there'll be a lot of points. These are two defenses that I don't really I think we saw the best from last year and obviously early last week. So I just think this is going to be one of those games where Detroit's kind of style of play with that toughness and balance might be a little too much for Washington in a tight one. So got to go with Detroit there.
Hey, can't argue that logic. So, all right, that's going to do it for us here today. Like I said, we have Full Press NFL or Fantasy Live. I've screwed that up 3 times already. So please, folks, boss, don't fire me, please. I promise I will be better later. But no, we have Full Press Fantasy Live coming up here at 11:30. And then, of course, tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., you can catch me and my co-host, Mr. John Sapichetti, on FPC Radio Live. And we'll kind of break down all of what we saw today, which should be hopefully a lot of good stuff. Hopefully there's be a lot of things to really dig our teeth into. But if not, we'll be back here next Sunday to preview week 3. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Give us a follow on Twitter at Full Press NFL. And, of course, go over to fullpresscoverage.com to check out all the great previews and information coming into this week and beyond. Have a good one, everyone, and we'll see you later.